Hello, welcome. I know some of you. I don't know some of you. But I'm glad to be here. My name is Kevin, as Pan said, and I live up in Lowell at the Monastic Academy, and I've been there for the past year and about 2.5 months now. Okay, so how many of you have a sense of like what the email talked about? The email was titled, I don't know is a good place to start. I don't know. Yeah? So it's like, I don't know is a phrase we hear quite often, right? But it's also an observable phenomenon. It's a state of the mind not knowing. And so today I want to help us maybe talk a little bit about my experience with it, talk about why I would even bring it up today, why I think it might be helpful for all of you, and go into the practice of how to work with it skillfully, what the results of that practice might look like, and maybe even I'll touch a little bit on some historical context, cultural context for like where did it come from, or where did this area of practice come from? Because it's not commonly talked about. That's sort of the first reason, to be honest, why I wanted to talk about it is I know some of you come to Sunday Set very often, and I don't know if this is talked about very often. Okay, so maybe just for a moment, let's like bring to mind something right now we're confused about. Could be anything big or small, could be overwhelming, so maybe take it easy. Might just be like, I don't know what I'm gonna have for dinner tonight, or I don't know what I'm going to do this week, or it could be big, like I don't know what the meaning of my life is, or I don't know how to find happiness. Could be big, could be small. Even the not knowing sense could be like well-defined not knowing, or like ill-defined, like you could have a hazy just sense of like confusion. Good, so this, is this comfortable or uncomfortable? This thing that we're conjuring up. Comfortable? Yeah? Got maybe some medium?
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable? Some in the middleness? Yeah? A little bit? It's generally, in my experience, like little bits of not knowing is fine and manageable. Like I can ask you a question like, what's 10 times 20? And for a moment, maybe you didn't know, and now you know. Or maybe you're still not knowing. Whatever it is, it's subtly uncomfortable, perhaps, in the state of not knowing, and then the mind sort of like does its thing, does what the mind does, and like comes up with an answer. We turn to our mind for an answer. And this is how the mind works. This is what the mind is for. It's for coming up with answers and understanding. Hey Nick. And it's good. This is good. We use our mind, and our mind is really useful in this way. Okay, so let me see if I can share a little bit about my experience with this. Okay. So about I'll say it's been about like 4 or 5 months where don't know, this like phenomena of like I don't understand, or this doesn't make sense, the answers aren't coming, has been very prevalent for me in my life. And this is actually a common like stage of practice where the answers, the orientation to the way you understood things before is falling apart in a certain sense. And my understanding of this is that this is an important thing to go through, and it can be worked with skillfully. So that's why this is important to me, and it's also important to me because we all deal with states of not knowing. We all deal with states of uncertainty. We all deal with wanting to know things that we either can't figure out or simply like don't know the answer to. Like, I don't know the answer to what I'm going to say next precisely. Like, I would like to know that, but I can't know that exactly, and neither can you. And that's sort of what makes this alive, right? Like, that's what makes this exciting in a certain way. It's not scripted, it's not planned. We're here, we're alive together. There's also theater, right, where it is scripted, but theater can come to life when there's a spontaneity to it, when there's a sense that even the actors don't exactly know the way the next moment will occur. A lot of my background personally is actually in theater direction, so I have a degree in that, and I'm very interested in the aliveness, the spontaneity in theater, because I think that's where the truth comes out, the truth of portraying human emotions and behaviors. So not knowing is just fundamental to life. It's what makes it alive. And there are certain questions that are a bit unanswerable, arguably. Like, we just like will never know the answer to certain things. Like, what happens after we die? We might have a suggestion, or we might be sure about an answer. And there also might be part of us that still is uncertain in some sense, or it might be just vastly uncertain about this question. And other questions, existential like it. And so we can practice to actually become more comfortable with this uncertainty. We can practice to become more okay with not understanding something. And I've practiced to become more okay with my mind not being able to form meaning in the way that it used to. I've practiced to be able to be okay with when I call on my mind for an answer and I get like nothing, just like blanks, like fill in the blanks, or at least fill in the blanks and you just get blanks. Often that's what it feels like to have a mind for me lately. I'm like, why am I doing this practice? And I just, well, why are you all here? You might actually like come up with an answer. You might have a really strong sense, and I've gone through periods of my life where I have clear intentions and understanding, and that's a part of life. And it's also a part of life to like lose those models and those ways of understanding, and then be in an unstable point, a point where you don't fill in that blank, or you can't fill in that blank. And I think what's happening then is we're like upgrading, we're like leveling up to a new model or way of understanding what's going on. I get a picture in my head of like climbing a ladder. And the way one climbs a ladder, of course, is if you look up and you want to get higher, you have to let go of a rung. And for a moment, you're not holding on to anything, except for the other stuff. You're still holding on to some models and ideas and understandings, but some of you is completely free and out of control. But this is a leap of faith that there is another rung up there that you could reach. But there is a period of time when you're just reaching. And this is a point of great faith. And if we can make that successful transfer and climb up the ladder rung, we've hopefully changed the way that we see the world and are one step higher to what I see as a possibility, a shift, a higher, a goal of awakening. And I'll just share, I don't know if this is helpful, but like, in my mind, what I see when I see the top of the ladder, I see, I used to go to summer camp in Philadelphia. Oh, not Philadelphia, it's in Pennsylvania, but it's a little bit in up there. It's a little bit up there. And it's one of the activities that we do is we would climb this really high ladder. It's very scary for me. And you would have to climb all the way up, and you're strapped in a harness and everything. But and when you got to the top, someone would be up there to help you up to the next level. That's sort of like Soryu to me. Soryu is our teacher at the Monastic Academy. And at the top, there is a zip line. And there's a zip line, and you can then, with this new height that you've reached, you can actually just jump off and enjoy the descent. So to me, that's the results of this practice. The results of this practice, namely being that we've let go of all of our ways of knowing, and a new kind of knowing can arise. And from that new kind of knowing, my understanding, what I've been taught or have heard or read, is that we can enjoy a new sort of wisdom arising and use it in our lives. So, that's all to say that this don't know practice is a significant practice. It's actually a significant way to develop insight, wisdom, and I guess I've shared a little bit about why it's important to me. I've shared a little bit about what it is. Soon I want to share about how do we actually do this. And I guess I want to share something fun. Maybe you'll enjoy something fun, or maybe I could be a little bit more fun and entertaining for you. I've been enjoying myself during free time, or during the free time that I have recently. I've been watching this series on Netflix called 13 Reasons Why. Some of you might know it. I saw some reactions. I think it's awesome. And it just came out with, or maybe not just, but I'm not very with it, so to me it's just, came out with season 3, and I watched all of season 3 within the last few weeks, and season 3 is full of not knowing. Season 3, the very beginning we learn that a young student who was a kind of a big bully, was very much a big bully. He was murdered, and we don't know by who. And does anyone here watch it and then would hate me if I like spoiled it? No? Okay, I won't spoil it, but I'll just say a little bit about it, because it's a common thing in all TV shows, movies. It's just a common device. And it says something about the way we are, in my opinion. So you're watching this TV show, and you don't know who did it, and actually all the characters also don't know who did it, or at least they're not telling us who did it. And unfortunately, our hero of the story, his name's Clay. He is this young, kind of scrawny misfit. He's kind of nerdy, very sweet, and heroic in other points of the plot, and he's our hero, our central character, and we watch him eventually get accused of this murder, and that seems horrible and terrible. Could never be true. That's what's true, and it seems like it's not true, and so we watch him struggle to try and take justice into his own hands. He doesn't know who did it, but he knows it's not him, and so he goes character to character, trying to ask them, find out, what do you know? Did this person tell you about Jessica? Have you heard about what happened to Bryce? Can you tell me about where Justin was? Blah, 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 blah. And it's very intense, and it's very fun. And we're very interested the whole time, because we don't know. And we don't know who did it, and they don't know who did it, and we want to know who did it, and they want to know who did it, and this wanting to know drives them to sometimes very careless actions, sometimes very dangerous situations when they're like trying to be detectives themselves. They're just kids, and our wanting to know also drives us to sometimes unskillful actions, like pressing next episode over and over and over again. I have experience of this, and this is the way suspense works. This is the way drama works, plot works. Is there's something we don't know, and we want to know what's going to happen. And we're just on the edges of our seats, on the tips of our toes, wanting to know. Please tell me. It couldn't have been Clay. It couldn't have been this person. I care about this person. I care about this hero. It couldn't have been. And in the end, turns out it's not Clay. It's not our hero. And our friends in the show, the hero and his friends, they all, well, it seems that they all make it out alive. They all don't get snatched by the claws of justice. They all, it does seem that justice in this season settles. It seems that things come to a rest. And they're happy. They're happy together. They've supported each other through this time of not knowing. So this is very interesting, and this is actually trying to portray something about life, in my opinion. And I think our lives are very much like this TV show and TV shows in general, except there's not like this neat, clean ending to them, except for death, but not like a season 3 ending where there's like some sort of resolution per se. It's sort of like we get like passed from question to question, and parts of our lives are open question marks, and that's just the way things tend to be, at least in my experience. great things happen and bad things happen, but there's always this untidy, there's not episodes and seasons and rest away from the TV show of not knowing. We're always kind of in it. This is problematic if we can't find rest within the truth of uncertainty of our lives. So I'll share, let's see, the remaining time I'm going to just pull up my notes. Is this making sense somewhat so far?
I just would like to hear more about that last sentence. You just said that if it's problematic if we can't find rest within the uncertainty of our lives. That seems really important.
Yeah. Like if we take as an axiom like that not knowing is part of having a mind, like a mind goes from knowing to not knowing to knowing to not knowing to like parsing out experience. If we take that as like an axiom, if we like can't be okay with half of experience, half of the mind's capability or state, then that's going to drive us a little bit bonkers, maybe a lot bonkers, and unfortunately it's going to drive us to, in my experience, suffering, and suffering has all sorts of problems, so it seems to cause other people suffering as well. So it's like, if we can it's been deeply relieving for me to just notice oh, I don't know why I'm doing this practice right now. I don't know why I'm here right now. That's a really good question. Why am I sitting here right now, right? It's not a really good question. I think that's a really good question. I have some answers to it. But when I ask that question, if I'm not okay with the state of not knowing or something, I also will sometimes tend to grasp at an old pattern or something. One way I could explain this is I have a sister who I don't always get along with, and she in my heart of hearts, I love her, and I think she loves me too. But we fight a lot, and I have some sorts of knowings about oh, this is why she does this the way she does it, and but those are not entirely true, and I just kind of grasp onto she does this because she's jealous. And that sort of my mind comes up with a reason of why she's acting in the way that she is, and it just doesn't allow me to see her truly. It's it just puts meaning onto life, and then it shields me from really feeling the uncertainty and the complexity and the confusion that is really there, and the pain. So yeah, that's a little bit about that. Yeah, so it's in general really helped me to rest easier and oh, it's okay to not know right now. Maybe whatever your experience is right now, whether it's you're tired or restful or confused or absolutely loving this talk and me, you can just be it's okay to have that experience. That's whatever that experience is, it's okay. And that's sort of what I'd like to share with you about uncertainty and confusion. For example, right now, I don't exactly know what I'll say next. Many things I could go towards, but what will I say next? Okay, so I want to just share, I think this is interesting, like many of you may know the practice of Zen has this thing that's funny. Sometimes people know about this, koans. Has anyone heard of koans? Yeah? So koans are one of the discoveries in history of this don't know mind, of this great doubt or great confusion. And this was discovered in Tang Dynasty China, and they used questions such as what is the sound of one hand clapping, or what is your original face for your parents were born, or does a dog have Buddha nature? These questions, they use these questions to cultivate this great confusion. It actually evoked don't know to work with it skillfully. And today, in the practice, we'll maybe experiment with that, evoking this don't know state. Also, the ancient Greeks, to my understanding, the skeptics, they worked with the don't know state. I guess a lot of, I guess my understanding of like skeptics before I learned this was like, oh, they're like really skeptical of everything, right? They doubt everything. But actually it turns out they had a lot of great faith, and they cultivated this great not knowing as well. And this was actually independently discovered. As far as we can tell from history, I've been told or I've understood that these were independently cultivated and practiced. And finally also, in medieval Europe, in Christianity, this don't know mind was cultivated. It was a central Christian prayer, and it's translated as the cloud of not knowing. I'm not a religious scholar, but I thought I'd just share a little bit of background to show that this is actually a central practice to spirituality. Okay, so before we go into practice, let me just share a little bit about the practicality. How do we work with not knowing? So first we need to identify it. We have to, for those of you who know Shinzen Young, Shinzen Young is one of my teachers and one of the teachers that comes to the Monastic Academy, and he's much more of a scholar in religion and language than I am, and he breaks down practice into 3 attentional skills: concentration, clarity, and equanimity. And so clarity, part of clarity is, I'll share this because I think it's great, is that like you can understand clarity, clarifying experience as what is happening, what is it, how much of it, where is it, when is it, and how is it interacting with your experience, and how is it changing? So these are like 6 interrogatives: what and how much, when, where, interacting in what ways, changing in what ways. This is the clarity aspect of mindfulness. And so I'll say what is don't know mind, and maybe a little bit more of a succinct definition. I'll try my best so that we can all identify what it is as we practice. It's hard because it's don't know. But it could be seen as confusion, muddle, mental muddle, the wanting or urge to know something, the not knowing of something, and this not knowing of something, not knowing of X. X could be big or small, very important, meaningful, substantive, or trivial. could be ill-defined or well-defined, could be simple or complex. So this not knowing can contain many different things. Also, doubt is a big one of not knowing, doubt. And this is regardless of like what caused the not knowing. Sometimes even just physiological states cause not knowing states. Like if you're very tired, you might investigate muddle. Like mental muddle is often a result of fatigue, body fatigue. Like I just don't quite know what's going on. I don't have clarity of mind. I've described it in my experience like sort of mental fogginess. It also comes from pain. Emotions can cause mental muddle. Aging can cause mental muddle, and illness, sickness can cause mental muddle. And of course you might understand at this point that these things happen to everyone, and so confusion, uncertainty, doubt is applicable to everyone. Okay, so once we've identified what it is, we can apply the practice to it. So the practice of working with don't know mind is largely abiding with it and applying equanimity to it. So equanimity is letting go of the push or pull with the experience, allowing don't know to be just as it is, and observing it with detachment and trying not to identify with it. Try not to do anything about it either, not trying to change the state of not knowing and think about how to fill it, how to fill that blank. We can actually just like be with the blank, be with the what is that, right? So I love this. Shinzen says it's like fasting from food. If you fast from food mindfully, you will equanimize and work through the things that drive you to eat, because you'll be abstaining from eating, so you won't be able to feel the urge to eat. So you'll just have all these urges, and you'll sort of digest them. If you fast and then you come back to eating, you'll notice that eating is more fulfilling and it's more natural, it's less driven, and this is analogous to working with don't know. If you work with don't know, you will just stay with the blank of not knowing, stay with the blank, the what is that? I don't know the answer. Just stay with that in equanimity. You'll actually work through the mind's habit of wanting to know. So you like work through the forces that like constantly drive us to think. And as a result, the habitual forces that drive us to think will be less driven, and a new kind of knowing can arise. Wisdom or insight or vipassana. This is the do know that can arise from the don't know. So the main thing is to abide with equanimity in the sensation of don't know. So I hope that was helpful, and let's move into a period of practice. So make yourself comfortable. Find a comfortable position for your body. Feel free to move around. So take a moment to stretch up and settle in. This alignment of the posture into a dignified, open, spacious pose is important for the beginning of meditation. You can feel the earth beneath your feet, the seat beneath your pelvis. You can feel the top of your head reaching up to the ceiling and beyond that, the sky. For a moment, just landing here and now. If the spine is tall and upright, then everything else in the torso can relax. Shoulders can let go, the arms can hang loose. And the legs can fall into the seat and the floor. Now, we'll note or notice spontaneous arisings of don't know. And I'll invite us, if we like, we can use a label. And what I'll suggest is labeling how much of don't know is present. It may be that there is no sense of not knowing present. There is just a subtle amount present, a medium amount present, or a strong amount present. And I'll suggest using what's called a 4-point Likert scale to note how much of don't know. That is, using the labels 0, 1, 2, or 3. 0 for rest, there's no don't know present. You can enjoy that state of rest from don't know. 1, there's a subtle amount of don't know. 2, there's a medium amount of don't know. Or 3, there's a strong amount of not knowing. If there's a strong amount of not knowing, then we can probably guess it's spread throughout the body, so we can zoom out and cover it as a whole. So, using the numbers 0 through 3, moment by moment, label whether or not, or how much of don't know is present. As an example, it might sound something like this, but in your mind or silent. I'll do it out loud for an example. 2, 2, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, and so on. So you can do this in your mind. Even sometimes mouthing the lips can help. Or you cannot use labels at all. You can allow spontaneous don't know to arise. It just happens that don't know is present or not. Or you can evoke don't know from the inside by bringing up a question or situation or even something broader like a philosophy that you're not sure the answer to. And you can work with evoking don't know. Or you can, like I said, be with the spontaneous sense of the mind not knowing. again, don't know can be subtle or gross, can be flavors of confusion, doubt, indecision, not knowing what action to take or not take. It can be the sense of not knowing something, big or small, important or trivial, well-defined or ill-defined. It can be the inability to know something, or the sense of wanting to know something. Again, the primary technique to work with don't know is abiding with it and applying equanimity. Applying equanimity is developing, cultivating a balanced, peaceful relationship to don't know. Three ways of doing this are, first, using a equanimous, objective, balanced tone with the label, like reading a dictionary. Let the labels you're using put you in a state of balance. Second, keep the whole body relaxed. However relaxed you are, this is good, and see if you can relax even more. Third, developing a welcoming attitude towards the state. Welcoming in this mental doubt or confusion or indecision. Not trying to do anything about it. And just letting don't know be as it is. continue to note the general level of don't know in the mind, allowing external sights, sounds, or physical body sensations to arise and pass in the background, and continuing to work with the inner system, noticing how much of don't know is present moment to moment. If you don't know how much don't know mind is present, or if you don't quite understand how this practice works, then recycle that into the technique, noticing that that too is uncertainty or confusion, and notice how much of that is present moment to moment. 6 minutes. So if you like, take a moment to feel good about the practice that we've done so far. Feeling whatever positive benefits are here. Maybe feels restful, more calm, settled. Just feeling good about putting in the effort. So in the first period of practice, we worked with directly 2 of the 3 attentional skills that I mentioned. They were concentration, clarity, and equanimity. We worked a lot with equanimity, making the label, tone, objective, relaxing the body, and developing a welcoming attitude towards the focus space. We also worked with clarity, identifying perhaps a new or newer aspect of sensory experience, the what component of clarity, and also the how much component of clarity. So we increased our equanimity and our clarity, and in this next part, this next period of practice, I'll suggest a way of working with don't know mind to further develop the other aspects of clarity. So again, establish a good posture if you haven't already. One that is both upright, alert, and relaxed, poised upwards and gently released into gravity. In unified mindfulness, a way of working developed primarily by Shinzen Young. There's a family of techniques called focus in. This refers to the inner system, the way of living, the aspect of sensory experience that is sort of in our insides. It's not able to be seen directly by others. This is our minds and our emotions. This is where don't know exists. Don't know can be broken down into the 3 components of the inner system: mental talk, mental images, and body emotion. See, hear, and feel. So if you like, notice if there's any spontaneous sense of not knowing, doubt, or indecision, mental muddle, wanting to know or not knowing. Notice if there's any aspects of that that are like images in the mind. These could be vague, fleeting senses of sights in the mind. Notice if there are any auditory sensations in the mind, mental talk associated with don't know mind or confusion. These can be in the form of words or just murmuring. Often when we don't know something, our mental talk might sound like being in a crowded room where there are lots of conversations occurring, but we can't clearly hear any of them. Finally, we can look at any body emotion associated with don't know. This can be pleasant or unpleasant. Feelings that have an emotional quality. Feel like they're not just physical sensations like touching the chair. Often don't know can be subtly unpleasant, maybe spread broadly over the body or not, could be local. So now that we've identified the inner system, mental image, mental talk, and body emotion, see, hear, and feel in shorthand, you can continue to work as we did before, noting general level of don't know. Or you can differentiate the different strands of spontaneous don't know by labeling see, hear, and feel, untangling the experience of don't know. Through untangling, we can gain greater equanimity. Or you can follow along in an exploration that I'll offer. If you're following along, I'll invite you to ask any question that arises for you. These can be big questions or small questions. You can stay with one question or flit from question to question to question to question. This can be about significant, important things to you, or unimportant, or trivial things. It can be spontaneous or controlled. But take a moment to just begin wondering without the need to answer. To have the courage to ask questions without requiring there be a response. This can be about your current life situations, relationships, decisions, or this can be about existential or philosophical views, or this can just be questions of your values, or how do I live a true life? How do I surrender my life to love? Or you can keep it simple and ordinary. What do I need right now? Why am I here? How can I finish this project I'm working on? Just noticing what's it like to ask questions, not necessarily thinking about an answer. this becomes difficult or heavy, you might wonder about that. Why is this hard for me? Why am I uncomfortable? Again, trying to maintain an equanimous, welcoming attitude towards the not knowing. Okay, good work. Shinzen has said that we turn to the mind for answers. We turn to the body for comfort. And we turn to the world for love. This constant turning towards the mind, the body, and the world doesn't seem to work in finding our true happiness. And today we've worked to examine the process of turning towards the mind for answers. Enjoy whatever fruit or freedom that's shown. Okay, very good. So this is now time for discussion. We can talk about the themes presented tonight. We can talk about the guidance, the meditation, your experiences, any questions that you have. Floor is open to everyone here. Let's make use of it.
So I was thinking about the sort of not knowing thing every so often as I was meditating. And it was sort of interesting to see what was coming up for me in the process of attending to the not knowing thing. So I ended up focusing on that to a degree. And it's interesting the emotional sort of context of that for me. Overt fear really is not a big thing in what I was experiencing with it. It's more like a sense of grief would be the best way that I could come up with for it. And I realize in a way, for me, the sense of not knowing is kind of a sense of not being really fully connected and part of reality. And so there's a sort of a kind of, maybe, I don't know, sort of spiritual anguish to it in a certain sense, whereas like, to me, the experience of knowing when it gets sort of deeper or more profound is a sort of intense sense of sort of connectedness. It's not really necessarily having content, although it does have content. And so there's a sort of also grasping for what knowing brings. And at the same time, I also thought about it, I also sort of intuitively attempted to reverse the meditation and sort of see what happened then and just say, I know, and what came up with that. And my immediate association is I live with someone who has a tendency, like on the telephone with his family, he'll be like, I know, you know, and so that sort of came up too, and realizing that I know is actually also, in another sense of it, is also kind of a frustrating state potentially too, because it goes along with a sense of moral incontinence where one has an idea of what one should be doing and what's right, and then the ego kind of takes precedent over it for the reasons of our sort of projected experiences of what it would mean to follow what we believe we should be doing. And so I also think that that's sort of a big part of this I know thing for me too. And it may be a part of the sort of whole repression of the process of actually knowing things. And why, you know, there's this sort of whole sense of grief around knowing, and also potentially not knowing, and the, you know, and the ability to act. So I'm just sort of, that all sort of came through in a bit of a wad of stuff, but.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of stuff. Which is also like confusion, right? Like that's also part of the not knowing, is like this like rich amount of stuff that it sounds like it came up for you. Yeah. What I really liked listening to you was like how creative you were being in the meditation. Like sort of often, that was like one of the first instructions he said to me was like, you're gonna have to be creative if you're gonna want to achieve your goals. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say that I liked hearing your creativity, and like in that, like that is like investigation. That is Vipassana, investigating like what is my sensory experience, what is my experience of being alive. And it sounds like you're like unfolding insight into patterns of grasping for knowledge with for spiritual interconnectedness feeling, and also sometimes for egoistic motivation or something, it sounds like. Is that right? Yeah, so it sounds like, I guess really questioning the motivational structures of knowing. Is that sort of?
Well, not so much questioning it, because I mean, I can kind of see both types of motivations, that sort of utilitarian and that sort of intrinsic kind of thing, but more noticing maybe why I might have blockages with it because of things that have come up for me in the past with, you know, either knowing or having a sense of knowing in a situation. And the sheer difficulty sometimes of taking a sense of knowing or awareness or a belief system about something and having the recognition that my desires around it aren't relevant to it, you know, nor are the things that I necessarily like to think be possible. So I started also projecting out, like, what would it mean to do the opposite earlier in the meditation process. Like, I was thinking, well, you know, let's say I did know all these things that were going to be happening and stuff in my life, and you know, and I have, let's say I have a perception 10 minutes from now someone in here is going to die, and 20 minutes from now this will happen, or, you know, there's a sort of paralysis that if one actually believed one really was knowing that stuff, and if one did, one presumably could verify that knowing, right? Like, that sort of sense of things is really just one of the challenging features of, like, mental awareness. So I do have at least the capacity sometimes to be aware of things or ideas or ways that things connect in ways that other people may not be aware of them. And it certainly is really challenging just practically to relate to that experience of, okay, this is my perception. Now, what do I do with this information?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said at the end, I don't know if you heard the Shinzen quote, but he told me that we turn to our mind for answers, our body for comfort, and the world, external sights and sounds, for love. And this helped me understand, I think, something around what you're talking about. Like, namely that, like, we want answers in the mind, like the mind wants answers and understanding, and the body wants comfort. We don't want to feel discomfort or pain. We want to feel pleasure and ease in our body. And so, like, it seems very natural to me to, like, want to switch the exercise away from not knowing to knowing, because that would be definitely a lot more, as you said, wisely, like, connected to reality, like, or in some way connected to reality in a certain way. So I think also not knowing is connected to reality. Like, I feel welcoming of the experience of not knowing as also part of reality, like also part of sensory phenomena. Yeah, I think there's I guess I just think there's, like, I guess I just wanted to, like, express that I think there's benefit to, like noticing, like, the things that, like, knowing arising, and, like, not like honoring it, but not buying into it too much. If these, like, intellectual queries arise, like, it's interesting. I think it's a good practice to, like, notice oh, this is my mind trying to understand and grasp reality, and this is just what it does, this is the pattern making it is meant to do, and that has its time and place, and also there's also other ways of being with the world that like are not through the understanding, mental understanding route. So yeah, it's a good inquiry. Does that satisfy something?
Satisfying? No, I mean, but I'm sort of, yeah, I think it does. I'm just thinking of this again, just from this sort of like sense of knowing versus not versus, you know, just all the, like I guess what I can come to myself from a pragmatic point of view is that my intentionality probably needs to be a sort of right knowing, you know, not either knowing kind of too much or too little for the process, but I'm really able to be present with it in a positive way and, you know, kind of serve what I need to serve in the process. Because I just think, you know, again, the more it sort of arises, even now, the more I sort of think about all the sort of belief systems we have around knowing and ethics and, you know, like what we do with that information. And sometimes I really, really run into those situations in very practical ways where I have a belief that something might, under some context, be helpful for someone or something, and I really can't address it without potentially fairly negative consequences, or it just not being heard, or that kind of thing. So it's just a relationship that I personally have with it, that you know, I think it's sort of a long-term process how to navigate that and how to have the ability and wisdom of what to do with sort of knowledge or information or a sense of things or intuition or all the different forms, whether it's something that's like, you know, this sounds right to me, or it's something that feels like it's sort of, you know, coming down from God being emblazoned in stone in front of me. You know, there's like a different, there's a sort of spectrum of it, but yeah.
Oh gosh, time's passed quickly.
So.
Before we wrap up, is there anything burning anyone wants to talk about? Two burning things?
It's not burning, it's an offering.
Oh, okay.
A burning offering, maybe, I don't know.
Is it relatively quick? We've got to wrap up a little soon.
It's a poem that would take a minute, I guess.
Yeah, please.
But ladies first, really.
Okay.
Oh no, I'll wait to the end.
Okay, great. Yeah.
This is a poem that reflects my meditation. It came to me in the meditation about René Descartes, who was famous for doubting everything in his philosophical approach to Christianity, and in that way making room or finding faith through doubt. So he used the not knowing technique while he was in jail, and was famous in the West for saying that he discovered, when he managed to stop thinking, to experience the soul as entering through the body, through the pineal gland, and that was his idea of the third eye. So the poem is called Descartes' Dungeon, because he was not only in a dungeon when he had this insight, but he also, his philosophy was that everything external is a kind of darkness. So it goes like this. Though belief doth bind to its own kind, it finds itself unleashed when with innocence in sheath. For to believe is to think, and to think is to doubt. So into René's mind you sink, with dark extension all about. Yet lo, the grace of glandular secretion soon dispels doubt's cloudy discretion, and metaphysical light shines from above when the glands are governed by love. So, faith is of feeling, doubt is of mind, while devotion is revealing who lies behind.